Hey there, this is part one of the Drumlin Diner from Fallout. I've made it entirely from different types of cardboard and painted it. It's quite basic once you really see how I made it. It took me quite a while to figure out how to make certain parts of this, but it worked out and I learned quite a lot from making this myself. I thought it was a very interesting process. In the upcoming videos, there's going to be an interior fully done and an exterior for the diorama, all are done from the game, and best I can do from images and walkthroughs and that kind of thing. It's also going to be post-apocalyptic, of course, and it's going to be run down and all that good stuff that I really enjoy doing. So I hope you get something out of this, and I hope you enjoy the video. I drew up a base the size that I thought I'd like it, and then I made a template so I could just gauge if the height would be correct to go with the base. And it looked okay because I didn't measure anything, I just drew everything up by hand. And then I used this for the height and the length of each panel to put into the building, and I just traced the windows out and the door out, and they just went round the whole thing like this. And the inside is less corrugated than the outside, so I used the smooth outer part for the building. As you can see, I just kept going along there and drawing the windows up in the correct order that they were supposed to be from the image that I used. I very lovingly curved the edges. Do it gently so you don't get creases on the outside. And I glued it down just a little bit by bit as I went. I cut the windows out before I go gluing down panels. I do that on all houses these days because it's difficult to cut them out once it's already been erected. Just give it a gentle curve. Take your time when you're curving cardboard. It'll be far more successful and less bent looking. There's a piece there for the drive-through out the back of the building, and I just put the panels on one at a time. Everything was hot glued with very small amounts of the hot glue. I just put some wood glue on later to make sure everything was nicely sealed up. And this last little stretch around the corner, which met perfectly. I don't know how because I didn't even measure the lengths, but it worked out nicely. I'm going to give it a nice prime with some flat black, predominantly to get rid of this pattern. It's very distracting and I can't see if everything's in proportion or not. And that's easier. I can see what's happening and what I've done now. To make the roof, I've sandwiched two very thick pieces of cardboard together to try and get the right depth. And just weigh them down overnight. And this is a floor. The floor and the roof and the base are all the same. I just trace everything as a template and draw it all up. And I'm doing it in an unusual order because I did things in a particular way because of measuring as a template. I hope that made sense. Just this printed out floor. Just glue it down, wait till it dries. Of course, flatten it while it's drying so you've got no bubbles in it. And then cut around it. Very, very basic stuff, but it's a nice, easy detail. Drop it in to make sure it fits, but I won't be putting it in yet because I've got to paint the building and I do not want to waste my time getting paint on the floor. It fits nicely. You can see everything coming together just with something as simple as this. It helps keep you going along with your work when you do something like that, so you know you're on the right track. For the corrugation around the roof, I just used corrugated cardboard, peeled it completely and had nothing but the corrugation so it'd be nice and flexible. And then bit by bit too, I glued this down just because I don't want it to bend. You can see that it's trying to crease there as I'm going gently around the corner. Just massage it with something like a skewer, and you've got to manipulate it so it's soft enough to go around corners. It will get there. You've got to be gentle with it. It's got a nice finish. I'm happy with that. And a nice prime on that as well. It's a little rough, but it's alright. This is going to be a dilapidated building in the end anyway. Looks like a Flintstones house. It's got a complete wraparound counter, which I really love. Once again, I laid the base down and I traced on a very thick piece of cardboard, and that's how I got the counter. I drew the outside around for the shape, about 1.5 centimetres. I guessed how deep it was. And the same with the back. You could probably do this in one piece if you had a big enough piece of cardboard. I'm going to make a veneer to be the ridges or the corrugations running around the counter. It took me a couple of days to come up with this idea, but it worked out wonderfully. And I'm just going to pin these pieces of the counter down so they can dry extremely well. It's got to be straight because it goes around the entirety of the building, and if it doesn't meet up, it's going to throw everything off and look really, really bad. You have to take quite a bit of time doing this. Another detail I'm working on while I'm waiting for that to dry is just this edging that goes around the bottom and the underneath the roof. Everything I'm going by is by images online that I got and walkthroughs for the game, which was Fallout, sorry. Just pop it around the top. Everything's so much easier doing it this way. It's just the quickest detail you could make, really. A thinner piece along the base. I use things like coffee stirrers to measure these as well. I'm not measuring with a ruler. So it stays nice and correct. It's beautifully dry, all of it. You can see it's really starting to come together now. And the veneer, I drew extremely heavy lines into this because it's a cereal box and it's a little thicker than tissue box, and it's thin enough to be a veneer but thick enough to take an impression, which is fantastic. Can't see the impressions on this, but once it's painted you can see them. And bit by bit, like everything else, I did it slowly so I would go around corners without bending it and making creases in it. Then I put some lightweight polyfiller all around the gaps that were in there because I couldn't get it perfect. My style of building is quite sloppy, so I tidy my work up with things like this, with the filler all the way around the edge where there's gaps and also around the edging of the roof. The roof is not quite how I would have liked it. It's the first time for me doing this, and I'm troubleshooting my mistakes at this point. I'd like to attempt something like this again because it was a beautiful, successful way of doing this kind of roof. Aside from it being a little untidy, it's going to be wonderful. And now just everything's primed and ready to start painting. You can see it's starting to look like a diner. Some yellow paint that I made up. It's extremely flat, chalky paint. It's just yellow and a colour that was called Sage, which looked like a very light grey with a dash of green in it. Because I'm going to make this look, apocalyptic when it's done. And even though it looks kind of like white, when everything comes together, that yellow will start to brighten. You will notice it in upcoming videos. A little red on this. I should have painted that strip before I glued it down, but I didn't have the hindsight at the time, but I do now. About 3 coats of paint on that. The same with the building, and everything had to be coated multiple times. The silver went off beautifully on this. It's just so smooth, and you see those lines, the impressions coming out. I didn't expect it to look so clean. I'm very, very happy with the counter. And a strip around the roof. You can see the fuzzy edges of that. Pop the floor in, glue it down, of course, and weigh it down for a few hours. Make sure it's lovely and flat. These are some strips for detail that I decided to do after the ones I just painted, and a little door that's just been knocked up really quickly. Later on it'll have a door on the inside, so it's not a permanent fixture at the moment. Painting these strips red so I can wrap them around the building now, instead of putting them on and then painting them later. Much quicker and much tidier. I have better control over the paint that way too. More cardboard from a cereal box. I made another impression running a line down for the border of the room. Move it over slightly because there will be a door frame on the inside later on, because I will be doing a full interior for this building. This is so superior than to painting inside a room. Imagine picking it up and trying to turn it round and paint these lines, and you know, it's a great way of doing it. It's almost seamless. Very tidy. I like it. The door I painted thrice. Everything had to be painted so much with this flat paint. I'm not sure why, but I wanted a really clean look anyway. I don't want to have any of that black coming out from underneath because I'm going to make it dirty later. So it's nice and new looking. Strip of silver down the bottom. I used another strip of cardboard from the cereal box on the bottom as well. A little silver on the door handles. I probably put a piece of plastic for the door in the middle of that later on, and then I'll grubby it right up. Looks good, I like it. Some strips for the detailing around the doors and windows. They're just sliced up coffee stirrers with a bit of silver paint. I like to use my fingers for this kind of painting because it's meant to look like metal. And when you use your fingers and you gently slide the paint across it, you get a beautiful even coat, and it diminishes the grain in the wood. This is a piece of cardboard from the cereal box because the stirrers were just a little too thick and I needed to slide it in behind that counter there. It's just the way I built it, and I had to keep going back to my reference pictures, and it was problematic. This is where it starts to come together and the building starts to look nice. I was concerned for a couple of days that it was not going to work, but it did. There was 2 strips around each side of the square windows, as you'll see later on, and little pieces down the bottom. Each one of these is just, I hold it up, I mark it with a pencil, I cut it and I glue it down. It's one by one by one, no measuring needed. Just another bit of detail from that cardboard strip. That cardboard comes out very leathery, which is nice. It's like a really soft, thick leather. I'm guessing it's because of the amount of plastic that's in the cheap paint, but it's nice and strong. And just to do around the windows, they will be rusty later in the next videos, but I'm using this cotton bud and plenty of paint on it, and it's filling up the little tiny corrugations that were left. Make it as tidy as possible because I do want it to look as new as I can at the moment. You could use a paint pen to do this as well, but I just used the cotton bud and just ran around the edge for the outer part of the rim of the window. Oh, that counter is so shiny. I love it. I'm going to put a sign on this now because it can't be the Drumlin Diner without its sign. That's how I measured it. I just gauged between the 2 windows how long it would be and the height of it, and then I just glued this bit of cardboard on this bit of cardboard. Wait till it dried, and then I snipped it off. It's rough. It's really, really rough, but it worked. I'm not going to keep this sign. I'm pretty sure I won't anyway. I'm going to make something a little more 3-dimensional than the one I'm making. You'll know what I mean in a minute by more 3-dimensional. But this will do for now. As long as the size is correct, it's all good. Oops. I've cut a slot in either side so it can sit onto the roof, and just for the bottom because it was cut roughly and unevenly, so I just cut out another bit of cardboard that I traced around it and whacked that on there, tidied it up immediately, so I was happy with it. Glue it down, give it a coat of black matte again, and a few coats of that yellow paint that I've got. It's always great to make up your own paints when you're doing this kind of thing and leave it in a jar until well after you've finished building. It's good for fixing mistakes and building parts that you want to put on or whatever you're doing. Never throw your paint away until you know your build is 100% complete. And now that's nice and dry, I'm going to put the actual sign or signage onto it. I printed multiple ones of these out because I wasn't sure of the size. I did it at the public library, so I didn't take my work with me. I just chose the one that seemed to be the best size. Then I just did a little red around the top and the bottom edges of this so it would blend a little more seamlessly. And then I'm just going to very neatly glue it down with some wood glue. Put a nice film of wood glue onto the paper and then adhere the paper to the cardboard. It's lovely. The shadow that comes off this printout does all the work for me. I want to make more three-dimensional lettering and everything else once this is complete. But for now, that'll do. And this is the initial build. It's the tidy body build. So yeah, now I get to play with it and have some fun with it. I love the idea of a diner. I was initially going to make a diner and then I stumbled across this one from Fallout 4 and I thought that's the one I want to do. And I want to do the full diorama, full interior, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope to see you in the next ones.